There's no improvement that can be made, that there's too many humans on the planet. Young people who are choosing not to have kids because they're worried about what the future might hold. This is a very bleak vision. So it's interesting to me that somehow that, because it has that spiritual component, is so attractive to young people. I just find that to be self-defeating.
Well, they're afraid, but the thing is, it's not just that they're afraid, because it also appeals to their irresponsibility. So what happens to people is if you truncate their time horizon, so let's say you put people in a situation where they know that they're going to die in battle in 2 weeks. Well, they're going to party like there's no tomorrow, because there's no tomorrow. And so if you tell people that there's no tomorrow, well, that does terrify them, but it also offers them an excuse for irresponsible hedonism. And so that's a very toxic combination, and the left has definitely capitalized on that. Now, the problem with that is that it leads to despair. And so, and not very long. Assuming you're not dead, it leads to despair, right? Assuming that the apocalypse doesn't come. So it's not a good long-term solution. I was writing this morning about the end of the Exodus story. And so it's detailed out in Numbers, actually. And what happens is that the Israelites are now on the edge of the promised land. So now they're looking to actually occupy the future. And Moses sends scouts out to check out the land. And the scouts come back and make 2 reports. And one report is unbelievably pessimistic. It's like, there's nothing but giants in the land of Canaan. They're going to crush us militarily. We don't have a hope. The future is dismal. Everything is terrible. You're a corrupt leader. You led us through the desert only for your own power, and we should go back to the tyranny of Egypt. And that's one group of reporters. And the other group is Caleb and Joshua. And they say, well, there's some troubles ahead, but we can manage them and we're going to be delivered, right? Well, what happens is that God brings a plague in and strikes down the faithless scouts. And Joshua, who's the scout with courage and faith, leads the Israelites into the promised land. And there's an archetypal significance to that story, and truly, which is that leaders who envision the future are called upon to presume that we can manage, to offer that vision to young people. In faith and courage, because that's what you have to confront the future, because you don't have the facts at hand and you never will. And you say something like you do when you get married. And the idea is, we can do this. That's what you say when you have kids. We can do this. And it's the business of leaders to say that, especially to young people, that we've got this. If we put our heads together, if we abide by the proper moral principles, if we make the right sacrifices, if we're responsible, we can make the future the promised land. And so conservatives have that at their, it's within their grasp if they want to take it, that vision. Because as you said, the vision of the left is unbelievably toxic.
It's very bleak. I believe you've just called Alberta the promised land, because that's exactly how I look at what it is we're trying to do in Alberta. And it's working. I mean, I couldn't have been more astonished at what happened post-COVID when we said we're getting back to normal and we're going to invest in our economy and we want people to come here to help us build this place. It has been more successful than I ever could have imagined. We had over 200,000 people come to Alberta in 2023, and they're continuing to come, and it's young families. And my view, and I just said this, I was on a radio program today, because you can look at the problems. You say, oh, yes, we've seen now a surge in housing prices, and we've got issues of crowded classrooms, and we've got more people who need healthcare. And of course, whenever you end up with people who find themselves displaced and don't get a job, you do have a problem with homelessness and addiction. But my view is I would rather take the challenges of a growing economy where people are wanting to solve the problems than the reverse, which is managing the decline, which is where Alberta was at for the last 10 years. And I'm just seeing it just aspirationally, because people want to come here and want to be part of what it is that we're providing. And it's very simple. The ones that I've met at various festivals over the summer is, you know what? I can afford a home here. My dollars go further because the taxes are lower. I'm able to raise my family and have a conversation about whether or not one of us wants to stay at home. Those are the very basics that people are looking for in life, and so I think we're trying to provide that here, and I think that people are responding to it.
Well, if the question is Alberta the promised land? The answer is, do people who are in the desert want to go there? And the answer to that is yes, because you have this net influx. And so people are making that decision all by themselves, is that whatever you're offering is obviously worth pursuing in comparison to what they have. And that is the eternal definition of the promised land. And you do see that by the proclivity of people to vote with their feet. And it is the case that Alberta is one of those places that I think beckon property to young people for exactly the reasons that you just described, not least because of the still intact preponderance of an essentially small c or classic liberal ethos that characterizes the not only the population from the bottom up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
it is.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting to me because we actually now, I think, have more conservative premiers in the country than we have other parties. Because there's myself, and then there's Scott Moe in Saskatchewan, Doug Ford in Ontario, and then we've got conservative leaders in Atlantic Canada as well. So there is something that has happened at the subnational level. And those are all the services, and that's we are the ones who have the primary responsibility for creating the economic environment and the social support environment that's going to be able to support people. And so I think it's telling that, notwithstanding the fact that we've had a dysfunctional federal government that is operating on an entirely different set of values that I think is destructive for the country, in some ways at the subnational level, we have conservative leaders who I think have been able to counteract it to a large measure. And maybe that'll ultimately spill over federally. Maybe people will have finally had enough. I think I'm surprised to see the folks of Toronto have finally had enough. That, I think, came as a surprise to everybody. But if
that's definitely a kind of miracle.
If even the folks in downtown Toronto who have not voted anything other than Liberal since 1993 have said this vision is not one I want to buy into, that's a very important turning point, I think, for our country. We need it.